you be with them, and be with Paul. We ask you to be with, Mary, who has, cancer, and will be having a surgery, it's upcoming on the 29th, Father, and, we ask that you, guide the hands of the surgeon, Father, and, also be with Cindy as her dad will be having, cancer, bless the hands of the surgeons, on that, Father, and we pray that everything, goes well with that. We ask that you be with, Sam's, daughter-in-law that is, pregnant and on bed rest. We ask that you put your loving arms around her and, return her back to her normal health, Father, and we pray that her pregnancy is safe and that she is able to deliver, a healthy baby. We ask that you be with, Scott and Nancy's German family, as they will be traveling, Father, and, the brakes are going out on the car, and we just pray that you will get them home safely, and bless them, in their efforts, Father. But most of all, Father, we do thank you for Jesus dying for us, and, bless us in our study. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Okay, so moving along with the family issues, we only had like, I think four topics, 3 questions. We covered the gender, same-sex marriage type thing last week. Today we're going to do 2 questions. One was important back when I wrote it many years ago. It's not, doesn't get as much press today, but the last question certainly does, and that's about abortion. And in all of these cases, probably the single most effective thing you can do as a Christian worldview is to first find out why they are disagreeing with you. Because the type of disagreement, what they are disagreeing with you about, may actually stem from something that is not going to be fixed with the facts that we're going to show you. They're not making decisions based on facts, they're making decisions based on emotions, and you have to tackle emotions totally different than you do when you've got somebody to listen to facts. And the same thing applies today. So all right, let's look at the first question. This was actually a big topic back about 10, 12 years ago. Should the federal government pass legislation allowing doctors and family members to decide when a loved one should be put to death based on the individual's quality of life? What do you think of that? Back when this was written, remember Jack Borkian?
Yes.
Yeah, he was putting them out regularly, yeah.
I strongly disagree that they should do that, but I think, in fact, we do that all the time. Because I know my mother, we probably could have force-fed her through her veins.
Yeah.
She had cancer for several years. And I think, I can't remember what they call it, hospice had been out for a long time. And so what you're doing is you keep them without pain.
Yeah.
And you're basically letting them, I guess, starve to death or something's killing them.
Yeah, right.
Which, I don't have a problem with somebody doing that to me, for sure. But I really wonder if we're not really doing that. We're not letting the government take control, but we are taking control and saying, because we had a family member that she did not want to be, any special life support thing.
Yeah.
And her son would not let her go, and he forced him to, he said, no, there's no thing that says she wants to not, she wants you to do everything you can to keep her alive. And finally he relented after a couple of weeks, and I think 2 or 3 days later she died.
I have one of those powers of attorney things with a DNR, do not resuscitate. Yeah. So basically, if the mind's gone, if I'm flat on the alpha and the beta waves, it's time to say goodbye. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My dad was on a ventilator for years. When we finally let him go, turned it off. And I know we've struggled with that, whether it was murder or, but without the extra help, he would have been dead years ago.
Yeah.
So,
First of all, I disagree with the fact the federal government should pass these legislation. But second, doctors and involved together in making a decision whether to allow someone to go on a path.
Yeah.
The part that says should be put to death, probably I would say should be allowed to die.
Or
Because-
assisted in the process.
Assisted, yes,
Yeah.
yes, because, it takes both. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want my doctors to make that decision, and the family needs to know information for to make that
Yeah.
decision. Because Gene, I've been through that many times, and, I think that it takes everyone to make a decision.
And that's why I decided specifically, I'm looking for brainwaves. When the brainwaves go flat, I'm already up there talking. Okay, that's what it is, my opinion. Yeah,
Mike first.
oh, good.
Is it, there, aren't we dealing with sort of two different questions here?
Okay.
Because Kevorkian wasn't just unplugging the machine.
No, he was setting him up to die.
This was someone that had just gotten for example,
Yeah.
a diagnosis that says you're gonna die in 6 months, and they're gonna pull the plug right in.
Uh-huh.
And basically giving them an injection or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that speeds the process.
Yeah, Kevorkian, you press this button, wave his body, yeah.
And there's gonna be some kind of distinction there between.
And that's why I wrote this question that says the federal government, or what else, passed legislation. Because back when this was written, there was a large chunk of people, not, maybe 30% of the people, that were actually campaigning for a law to allow Kevorkian to do his thing.
But remember, the people make that decision. The person asking Kevorkian to come in, they're the ones that decided, hey, I want you to
I want-
come,
yeah, yeah.
I want you to do this.
Right.
They were deciding, not him, he didn't just go in and do it.
Right. And, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Just a little clarification. Is this specifically talking about doctors and family and not the individual?
You know, I never really thought about the individual. You're right, that's the doctors and the people, and that does not include the individual, and that further complicates that, and I probably should have put that in
Because
place somehow.
the reason I ask is, like my grandmother, she is not in the right state of mind to make any decisions for herself.
Yeah,
So doctors or family could make decisions for her.
yeah,
I don't really think that would be right. I think she's perfectly healthy. But recently, as you all know, my grandfather passed away,
yeah.
and it was his decision to just stay medicated, and he said, I'm not going to drink anymore, I'm not going to eat anymore, I'm just going to pass away.
yeah,
And it was difficult for us to hear,
yeah,
because selfishly we want him to stay here with us.
yeah, yeah.
But he was already in a lot of pain, and
I like the concept of I'm going to decide to die when God says I'm ready to stop. Now, I know that starving is going to speed things up, but if I stop eating, He will take me, and I'll go when He takes me. I feel better about that one. Yeah.
I honestly feel that statement, not that I agree with it by any means, but I believe that it is true without the individual listed, because a lot of times the individual is totally forgotten, third person, completely.
Hey, what was that famous girl from earned all kinds of money when she married a rich guy? She was from Bermuda or something. Anyway, that sounded like that girl's. She was famous. She was a model or something. I can't remember her name. Anyway, Anna Nicole, that one, yeah. Okay, well, let's see what the Bible says. Any suggestions on how do you handle this from the Bible? How would you biblically address this?
God gives life and God will take it.
All right.
Hairs on your head is numbered.
Yeah. All right, let me show you the verses I picked. I'm sure you can find more, but let me show you what I picked. All right, Ephesians 5:29 says, "For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of His body, His flesh, and His bones." So that basically is an intent, I think, to say that this really isn't your body. It's kind of like you're renting it from me, but most people love their body. I can see where possibly you can come to hate your body if it hurts you enough. But the one that I thought was a lot clearer was in 2 Samuel 1:10, And this is the story when Saul is about to die. In one sense, this is his, what do you call it, the guy that helps the general, his
Armor bearer.
armor bearer. There you go. He's talking to armor bearer. So I stood beside him and killed him because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. Okay, so it looks kind of like an assisted suicide or something, doesn't it? I mean, he asked for it.
His injuries were so bad that he was not gonna live, and
Right.
so.
He tried to kill himself and didn't completely pull it off.
Yeah. But then you go down 5 verses, and here's how David responded to the armor bearer, okay? So the armor bearer comes back to David's camp and says to David, this is what I did. He got essentially almost killed, and I finished the job, and it was important to give him the ability to die with some dignity. And then David says, and David called one of the young men and said, go, cut him down. So he struck him, and he died. So basically the guy who did the killing of Saul would come back to David and said, okay, this is what I did. That's why Saul's dead by my hand. And David said, you die, because you don't have the authority God does. What do you think about that?
I agree.
That kind of says, why don't we let God make the ultimate decision? If I could make the decision beforehand, when I am sane and I am comfortable as a Christian, and I can put it in a power of attorney and say, well, my brain waves are flat, go ahead and DNR me, you know, and they pull the plug, that's probably okay. But I don't know. It's a hard one.
That's why I love hospice.
Like hospice,
I
yeah.
love them.
Some years ago, I read about, and I'm sure probably people, if they read it at all, will remember it, that in a serious automobile accident or trucks or whatever, it doesn't matter, the person was burning to death, and I think there was either a policeman there or something or other. He asked somebody to kill him because they could not get him out.
Yeah.
I really don't know what they did. I imagine, well.
Yeah. Anyway, this is one of the hard ones. From a biblical standpoint, if you only have to go based on the biblical, yeah.
There's possibly another take on this, that, in some aspects, if we can argue that someone that gets put on the ventilators and all these other, that you're actually going against God's will there.
Yeah.
That you're keeping a body functioning that.
Hang on to that thought. We're going to touch it in the very next question. All right, so what do you think? Agree or disagree from a biblical standpoint? Strongly disagree. Okay. Okay, let's get controversial. Since it is her body, a woman should be free to end her pregnancy with an abortion.
If the body belongs to God, you only have the body here on earth.
Okay. Other comments?
Biblically, we need to go back to Matthew, 19:18?
You
Be
said
not
no.
a murderer.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I go with.
My son-in-law committed suicide 5 years ago. Would that be considered murdering yourself?
Wow. You want to tackle that one?
I say yes.
You want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I do too.
Catholic Church principally, you can do suicide.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I don't know what God thinks. It's up to God to see where you go.
Yeah. Most of the churches based on Catholic doctrine say, yes, that is an unpardonable sin, and off you go. And obviously you never get a chance to turn it around, so it becomes one of those unpardonable things. Yeah.
Suicide is murder. The thing that has to be considered, though, and that you're usually not going to know in this world, is the state of that person's mind at the time they took the action.
Yeah.
A normally sane person does not commit suicide.
I can remember very vividly sitting there watching television on 9/11 and watching people just off the building, and then wondering to myself, oh man, if a Christian did that, what would happen? You know, it's one of my questions in my bag, but, it's not an easy question.
I think there are exceptions to every rule. Would that apply with God as well?
I don't see a whole lot of exceptions to God's rules. You may find one, but I haven't found one yet, yeah.
It's her body,
Yeah.
and she's carrying a human.
Okay, that's, basically, if you look at the DNA, there's two people there, not one, yeah.
Throw one more thing out that I think I saw just this morning in the news. A woman and her husband had a small child, and they had been trying for years to have another one, and she became pregnant. At about 7 weeks or so, they determined that the fetus was dead, it was no longer viable.
Right.
She tried to go and have a procedure done in a state, I assume, that would not allow it. She had to go and have 3 different tests done to make sure that she did have no longer a viable fetus.
Right.
And then she did get, quote, I guess, an abortion.
Yeah.
Now, did her pregnancy end when the fetus died, or was she still pregnant because she had a dead fetus? There's not,
Yeah.
you can imagine throughout everything, and there's one example about that.
Yeah, you see why it's a good topic, right, Mike?
One of, to me, and this is, without really being confrontational with someone, but I think this is a very relevant, question, and the answer of this is largely depends on where you fall in this. And the question is, when does life begin?
That's the second half of the slide, so we'll get there, okay.
Well, first of all, this is saying that she is ending the abortion.
Yes, she's
She,
making
the
the
pregnancy,
decision.
not the pregnancy has
No,
ended itself.
no. She
Which
is
would be a
making-
miscarriage or so forth.
Yeah, miscarriage
Well,
don't
I
count.
believe that, I know this is my opinion, that everybody has a soul. The body has a soul, and that baby is a body,
Yep,
and that baby has a soul.
and we're gonna tackle that one in the next half of the slide.
Okay.
That's good, okay. Before we go to the answers you've already given, okay, let's look at the scripture. On scripture on this one, I've got, from Exodus, 21:22. If men, and this is the clearest one I could find. If men fight and hurt a woman with child, so that she gives birth prematurely, yet no harm follows, he shall surely be punished according to the woman's husband's imposition on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm follows, then you shall give life for life. So that basically says, if you do anything to a woman, even up to causing her to give premature birth, but if the birth makes it, lives fine, okay, then all you're responsible for is whatever the lady's husband says, and the judge okays as payment. So you can still walk away, all right? However, if that child doesn't make it, then it's life for life. So they're basically saying, in the Old Testament anyway, if you kill the woman's kid, you're going to follow. Any comments on that? Yeah, good.
The state of Florida says if you kill a mother and an unborn child, that's murdering two.
Yeah, it's double, yeah. A lot of states have that.
And that was what I was.
Yeah, a lot of states have that. All right, let's, I'm gonna get a little biological test, yeah, strongly disagree. All right, so let me get a little biologically, deep into the roots here a little bit, but I think we need to do this to answer some of the questions. First, again, the absolute first thing you gotta do is you gotta check why they're making that decision, okay? What is the reason for it? Remember the 3 questions that I use all the time. If you say abortion, are you talking about a fetus that could possibly survive to an adulthood, and then you do something that causes it not to survive to adulthood? You call that abortion. Either physical abortion, or the old-fashioned coat hanger abortion, or the new drug abortion. Is that what you consider abortion? And if they say yes, then you gotta figure out, where is your answer coming from? What are you deciding that on? If they're deciding that on emotions, and a lot of the people that I see protesting in the streets today about Roe v. Wade, it is emotional. And when cameramen try to interview them, why do you want that? because it's killing someone, or my body. The one I hear most is, it's my body, I can do what I want. The same girl, by the way, a month ago said, you gotta get vaccinated because your body can kill my body. So my body is now your body, no, your body is now my body. Take the vaccine. So anyway, it's emotional. If someone says, well, I have facts that back up then you can go on and keep going. All right, so first, if you're lucky enough to have someone says, I make all my decisions based on facts, okay? They're my own facts, but I make decisions based on facts. Then you can start going down this line of reasoning. The first thing we have to do is agree on the basic rights. There are a number of people that do not agree on these basic rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay? Our country was literally founded on those principles. In fact, in the next session, we're going to tear it all apart and look at those. But life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If they do not believe that everybody has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that there stops the conversation. Then you have to establish it. If they do say that they believe in that right, that everybody has the right, and the key one is life. Because, I mean, let's face it, without life, the other two don't matter, okay? You know, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all the other stuff. If you ain't got life, you got nothing. So the important one is the life. If they can agree that life is basically important, then you've got the hardest problem facing you, is when does life start? And we literally have, from the moment of conception, all the way up to, hang on to your hats, folks, when the baby leaves the hospital. We have some senators in California that basically says that if the baby is born, we put the baby on the table, we have a discussion with the mother and the family, do we want to keep it or not? If the general discussion is, yeah, well, we'll keep it, then we'll go ahead and prep the baby and do all that stuff that you do when you've got a new baby. Snip off the cord, tie it off, whatever, okay. But if they decide they don't want that child, they just sit there and let it die. And that was actually some legislation that was intended to be passed in California, and it didn't. But as usual, when something passes in California, the rest of the country's right behind.
Sounds very Roman.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. They might as well just carry their baby over to Moloch and put them on the hot arms. All right, so those are the, when does life start? And unfortunately, I got a little bit technical on you. All right, so I'm looking now at 0 to 39 weeks for the pregnancy, and then from 39 weeks, taking a gap all the way out to age 25. Trust me, there are some folks that believe that teenagers don't deserve, maybe that's the whole. All right, so this is the question that most of the Christians lean towards, is the pre-zygote, post-zygote. When the male sperm hits the egg, okay, and first one through wins, and then the egg hardens up, it's called a speculum. The egg hardens up, nobody else can come in, and it takes a little while to get to the nucleus and it fuses. At that point in time, is usually the egg is drifting down the fallopian tube. It is not yet in the uterus, okay? At the point that they join together, those individual gametes become a zygote. So most Christians will believe, most serious Christians will believe, that life starts pretty close to being the conception, the moment that comes together. Because at that point in time, you now have one single cell, which is DNA different from the mother, okay? So at that point, that particular cell and everything it could possibly be is now different from the person that was carrying him, okay? When that happens, it's not even there. All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. That 50%, when that process happens, the egg does a couple of things. The egg hardens up so that no more sperm can get through. It also starts producing a chemical, which progesterone, estrogen, and so forth. And this chemical now passes through the woman's body and causes the uterus to swell up with blood vessels. The uterus, in a normal state, in between ovulations, wouldn't hold the cell. It doesn't have the thick mucus layer of blood vessels for the cell to anchor to. So if the egg doesn't produce the right chemicals, or if the egg proceeds too far down the fallopian tube before it gets fertilized, then the uterus is not going to be ready, and it gets passed right out. Once the egg gets passed, sometimes it will actually anchor in the fallopian tube, and then you have an ectopic pregnancy that can kill a woman. Okay, it can kill somebody. So, but it's growing. All right, it's growing. The other thing that happens is this is. I hate to say it, but this is a very sloppy process. Of all the fertilized eggs that manage to get fertilized somewhere in the fallopian tubes and has a chance to become a fetus, don't make it. And the estimates run between 50 and 70%. So between 50 and 70% of the eggs that are fertilized, they're a zygote now, and they're heading on down the fallopian tubes for the uterus, or they do implant the uterus, and then genetically something goes wrong while they're dividing the cells, and the uterus expels them. There is a 50 to 70% chance that they ain't going to make it at the first 6 days. Yeah.
That's the miracle of life.
Yeah. I'm gonna suggest that that's being taken care of. All right. So that, all right, now when you get out to like 3.5, 4 weeks, it's an SA flutter preg test. All right. So there's a patch of tissue on the heart, on the right atrium. It's called the SA node, the sinoatrial node. And this is what actually does the heartbeat. So the sinoatrial node is a little cluster of nerve cells that very regularly, like 60 times a minute, just gives a jolt, and then the heart beats. The brain has a nervous system down to adjust that by putting some chemicals in or out if you're going too fast or too slow. But if your brain's not talking to your heart, it's still beating, it's still doing that thing, the SA node, okay? So the SA node does it. And that actually occurs around 4 weeks, 3.5 to 4 weeks. So some people argue that as soon as we can detect that SA node doing the flutter, okay, then it's at that point in the laws, we're going to make the law that says you can abort, you can't abort after that point, all right? But you can in fact do a pregnancy test because the chemicals that are produced for a pregnancy test are in effect in the bloodstream. So that's around 3.5 weeks, and at that point the probability of the egg not making it drops down to like 40%. Right? The next stage is the actual heartbeat. So you can hear a heartbeat at about 5 to 6 weeks. Most states that pass what's called the heartbeat law, they shoot for 6 weeks. So at 6 weeks, you can actually hear a heartbeat, right? And that means the SA node actually has muscle under it. So when the SA node fires, then the muscle fires, and you can actually electronically hear that. So that's one of the points that they look at. But actually, in terms of a living body, the heartbeat doesn't do anything because there's nothing to pump yet until about, say 12 weeks. At 12 weeks, now the aorta and the pulmonary arteries have formed enough so we can actually move blood around, okay? It's going in a small, tight loop. We don't have any capillaries or anything like that, but now we've got a heart that is beating and actually pumping, and that happens somewhere around 12 weeks. All right, brain waves. The brainwave patterns start showing up around 7 weeks, between 6 and 7 weeks, which means we have enough neural tissue to form a brain and the start of the spinal cord, node cord. So at that point, you can actually start detecting some brain waves. They don't usually have any patterns to them. They're just kind of random, okay stuff, but you can detect those things. So these are all things that legislatures have argued with and fought with. When do we say you cannot abort after? Okay. All right, then if you're all the way out to about 25 weeks, 26 weeks, 27 weeks, we have what's called viability. Viability is basically the third trimester. Okay. Viability is when we assume that if it happens in a hospital and the baby accidentally gets born, there is a better than 50-50 chance that we can get that child along. I mean, it's gonna spend in NICU, and ICU for another 10 or 12 weeks with lots of assisted medications and stuff. But technically, you can survive after that point. There have been some children that survived after about 20 weeks, yeah.
My son-in-law in Colorado was born at like 25 weeks.
Yeah.
And he's obviously survived.
Yeah.
He
The
was in the
chances are
hospital
pretty
6
good.
months.
See, at 25 weeks, you've got all of your organs present, and all of your organs should be functioning, okay?
He was in the hospital 6 months,
Yeah.
but he survived.
Notice what the natural death rate of the fetus is at this point? Less than 3%. Okay? So basically, if the fetus ain't gonna work, if the fetus is not gonna make it, by the time you get down to 26 weeks thereabout, you're talking about less than 3%. When you get closer and closer to birth, that number goes below 0. I mean below 1 in the very, very small fractions. And then a little bit of peak at the end, because some children, the birth process kills them. They get tangled up in the cord, they strangle, all sorts of stuff happens. So there's a little uptick at the end. All right, so these are things where legislatures have fought to figure out where do I anchor my abortion law. And this is what the states are going to be going through for the next year or so. All right, we also have another place, because there is a reasonably, there's enough really far left liberals that literally believe that the only way you can save that, the only way you can save the baby is he's got to get out of the uterus. He's got to be on the table. Not the placenta, but at least if the baby is on the table, well then I can't kill him then. And that's where most of the liberals sit, okay? Right up till birth. And basically just the birth of the baby. We don't have to get the placenta out. At the point in time, the law does not recognize officially, it's been argued in a lot of cases, but the law technically doesn't recognize a fetus as a baby until the baby either gets like a footprint or a fingerprint or something, and a signature on a form by a doctor. All right, so you may have the baby on the table, and the doctor does this spank, and away we go. Well, until the doctor literally signs the paper that identifies that as a baby, it is not recognized by the U.S. government. So I call that legal ID. And those are the people that basically say, we can kill it even after it's out of the womb. You just tell the doctor, don't sign it. It doesn't exist, let it die. So that's the extreme. One more. And then there's neural completion. Because some people say, well, as soon as the brain is complete enough so you can function, okay, and you can do everything you need to do without assistance, without help, that usually occurs somewhere around 25 years old, okay? At 25, you ain't getting new neurons, you're just getting new synapses, yeah.
For some of us, that's much older.
Some haven't made it yet.
Some have not.
Yeah, go ahead.
I saw, there was a brand new study. I saw it published like 2 weeks ago. And I'm struggling, I apologize, can't remember the exact age, but it's like, 3 or 4 weeks, they have now proven conclusively that the baby in the womb hears and processes music. And they learn to respond.
Yeah.
So there's a baby that's 3 or 4 weeks old, and yet can hear music and associate it with something.
Yeah. I haven't studied that one yet, but I have seen.
It's brand new.
Basically what I've seen is that around the 7 weeks when the brain waves start showing patterns, they actually say somewhere in that 8 to 13 week range that the brain can actually process input. And that input could be a touch. When the doctor was in for an amniocentesis with a needle to suck some juice off, if he touches the baby will respond, and the brain waves show he did it on purpose. Yeah.
So John left in Elizabeth's womb when Mary.
Bingo.
Jesus entered.
Bingo. How many weeks was that, you know? How many weeks?
She
A little further along, okay. Yeah, I don't know where in the Bible says how old it was at that point, but yeah, you're
I
right.
think it's a shame, Scott, that our laws and the world would have to go to this point
Yeah.
to prove something they want to do illegally.
All right, I've only got 2 minutes left, so let me go through these 2 slides. All right. So what do we do about when we're dealing with someone who's open to facts, but wants to abort? What do we do? Fair and equal treatment. Probably the most inoffensive approach to these folks, such that it doesn't turn them off totally, but it forces them to think about it and go, well, maybe that's right, is, well, let's look at fair and equal treatment. If the zygote is like 50 to 70% dead and gone and flushed out, then who's taking care of the separating the good from the bad? It's either God, or if you don't believe in God, it's like random occurrences, okay? So maybe God, in fact, does catch the mistakes, because he really is up front, taking care of an awful lot of this stuff. And it may be difficult to define life. Well, if God takes it, God's the only one who can take life on for his purpose, okay? But anyway, so start getting him to think about, well, the large number of eggs that do not work, maybe that's the ones that you're worried about having a baby that you have to take extra care of because it don't work. Now, there are Down syndrome and stuff like that, but there are an awful lot of like spina bifida and all these things that kids are born with, that they're dying early. A lot of those are dying up in the fallopian tube. They're not making it. And maybe God's just taking care of the worst of that. Which then raises the question, well, if I have a Down syndrome, could that mean that God has a purpose for the baby? You know, interesting question. But get these folks to think. Another thing, heartbeat. If a life start, what we're fighting here with is the question of when does life start? In the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you said you believed in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. When does life start? If you believe that life starts when the heartbeat starts, does that mean when someone's heartbeat stops, they shouldn't give a pacemaker or first aid?
No.
Okay. Well, if your definition of life is heartbeat, do we have to go out there and kill everybody that's on a pacemaker?
No, because their heart is still beating.
They just have help.
Well, if someone has a heart stoppage, do you really know when you start doing the, okay?
Any organ in the body, you gotta get it replaced. You die if you don't.
That's what I wanted to think about, because you're talking about fetuses. What about adults? What about Aunt Susie, whose heart stopped, and they were able to bring her back 3 minutes later, and she made it? Okay. Does that mean we gotta let her do? We put a pacemaker in and started her back up again. Should we have killed her in those 3 minutes? Okay. Yeah.
I saw on Facebook this week, one opposition of abortion supporters put on a thing that says life begins when you breathe and you'll die when you quit breathing.
Yeah.
And
So then-
if you look at
So do we kill everybody on the ventilator?
if you go back and look at it, when God created Adam, when did he come alive?
All right, I gotta go quickly. I'm already 1 minute over. All right, brain waves. Does that, if life starts when the brain waves start, does that mean we should pull the plug on people that are comatose?
Once you put them on the life,
See, this is, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get this person to look at another set of facts. Well, if I have to kill my relative that's currently in a coma, well, then maybe I shouldn't be killing my baby just because brainwaves started, okay? And then the post-birth ID, the people that believe you can kill them all the way up to the point they're born. Does that mean if you don't have an ID, you have no rights? Someone without a driver's license, you're out of here. Thousands of people coming across the border without IDs, just kill them all.
I'm okay with that.
You okay with that? Okay. And that's the end of the question on the birth. This is my coming attraction. This book here, if you ever get a chance to get it, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about laws and in the country and how the country has a worldview. This book is the best book I've found to understand why we are a Christian country, even though not everybody's a Christian. That was a coming attraction, and I'm late.